Hello, fifth grade. So this is going to be our last water cycle PowerPoint. From here, you would have gotten to take home your water cycle kits in order to conserve and be efficient with your water use. I am still hoping that we will be able to send those home and be able to return to school. But unfortunately, at this stage, it's not really looking that way. But we'll just keep our fingers crossed. So today we're going to be talking about non-point source pollution. And this is actually one of the more devastating types of pollution that we run across because there is no point source. And a point source is a place that you can pinpoint that the pollution is actually coming from. You can go there, you can see where the pollution is coming from and how it is polluting our environment. A non-point source pollution is where you're not quite sure where the source is, where it all began. So that can be pretty devastating to the environment. We are not going to do the chart because you guys don't have your workbooks, and we've already been talking about pollutions. We have not been talking about non-point source pollutions in the sense of calling them non-point source pollutions, excuse me, but you guys do know what I'm talking about, and as we get into this lesson, I feel confident that you guys will be able to follow along just fine. So we're going to go ahead and review our water cycle. You guys know that it's evaporation, condensation, precipitation, but today we're going to talk about runoff. And runoff is not just one location. As you can see on our map, as it's starting to show with the blue arrows, runoff comes from all different sources. So for instance, down the mountain that you can see, they can come off of hills, they can come down to streams, they can come off rivers, they can even come from underground. So it gets sucked into the soil, as we've talked about groundwater before, and it actually gets released into a lake or ocean or river. So runoff can come from the beaches, which here in Florida is a big deal because a lot of people leave pollution on the beaches that just gets washed away by the waves. So runoff is precipitation, and as you guys know, precipitation is rain or snow or sleet or hail that did not get infiltrated. That means absorbed. We have talked about groundwater and how it takes it a little while to actually absorb the water. But when it rains, you will notice that there's a lot of water at once. So not all of that gets absorbed into the soil, and not all of that gets evaporated when the sun comes up. So it's actually, as you can see in the picture, it runs, which is why it's called runoff, to the nearest body of water, which could be a stream, river, lake, or ocean. The bad thing about runoff is that it also carries chemicals, and some of you guys may have seen an oil slick like pictured. This is where the oil on a road or a surface area is actually lifted up by the water, because we already know from STEM class that oil weighs less than water, so it floats on top, and it actually gets lifted and taken with the runoff down to either the ground surface or to streams, rivers, or oceans, which is where it ultimately ends up. So back to non-point source solution. That's when all those oils and substances and paints and things like that that get carried up, picked up and carried off by the runoff and ends up in our water. We cannot identify where that substance was picked up or how long that substance had been in the water. So it's known as non-point source pollution because there's not one definite place that that pollution comes from. It's from either multiple locations or they have no idea how it got into the ocean at all. So the difference between point source and non-point source pollution is that point source pollution has a single identifiable source, such as a factory discharging chemicals into the river as pictured behind the wording. A non-point source pollution is a collection of pollutions from many different sources, most commonly caused by regular people living their everyday lives. They throw trash down on the ground, they let some oil spill when they're changing it in their vehicles, or they drop paint, even sidewalk chalk. These are considered pollutants that do run off with the rain and the runoff into drains. So these are all examples of non-point source solutions and how it runs off into the drainage system. So you can see that there's bottles that people have thrown out of their car windows. There's washing your car, the suds and soap from washing the car. There's oil slicks, grass clippings. These are not things that are meant to be in the streams, rivers, and oceans in mass quantities. Even pet waste is part of the problem. Yes, there are animals in the environment, but there's a difference between one animal doing what they have to do and then a whole bunch of animals doing what they have to do in the same place. So, fertilizers and pesticides, soaps and detergents, car oil, paint, litter, and garbage, leaves, grass clippings, and plant debris, and pet waste are all some of the things we just talked about. This would have been one of the activities in your workbook, but again, you don't have your workbook and I'm not expecting you to do it. So we're just going to skip this activity and the pictures, or excuse me, videos that were supposed to go along with these activities. So some of the things that can wash into storm drains is paint, pet waste, rainwater, soap, motor oil, a can of soda, banana peel, and yeah, if you dump your soup out on the side of the road, that could end up there too. Anything and everything that you dump either into your yard or on the side of the road can end up in a storm drain and washed away by runoff. So please be mindful of the things that you throw down onto the ground. The only thing, excuse me, I clicked through that a little quick, but the only thing that should be going into the storm drain is rainwater. However, all the other things do end up in the drain, but the only thing that should be in there is rainwater. Nothing should go into storm drains except for that rainwater. Storm drains lead to streams, rivers, and ultimately the ocean. So it can not only hurt the drinking water that we've talked about before, but it can hurt the environment and ecosystems that it passes through. Important information is storm drains should be kept clear of any buildup. That means dirt, leaves, sticks, litter, whatever. Even natural things like grass clippings, leaves, and pet waste should not go down the storm drain. What happens is when we get a lot of rain really quickly, this stuff will back up the storm drain and cause flooding, and nobody really wants that, especially during a big storm or a hurricane. You want to prevent as much flooding as possible. So, what if we see someone dumping things into a storm drain? You can actually report it to the authorities, whether that's City Hall or the police. Anyone that is dumping anything into a storm drain will be investigated, especially here in Florida, because they are working as a state really hard to get rid of chemicals that are ending up in our ocean. And we're kind of one of the last stops, being an ocean surrounded state, for that stuff to be caught. This is your student assessment. I am not having you write it out like that, so I'm going to stop the PowerPoint like right here. Instead, I have a 5-question quiz for you guys. It should be really, really easy. I'm hoping it is. You guys did wonderful on the drought quiz. So it's only 5 questions, but please find it on the quiz link. Bye, 5th grade.